So a little additional topic I wanted to talk to you guys about are viruses. And the reason why it's kind of goes along with what we've been discussing is that viruses, kind of their main way of life is that they come in to a host cell. It could be humans, it could be plants, it could be animals, it can be bacteria. And they kind of hijack the system that we just talked about of, transcription and translation. So viruses themselves cannot do a lot of the actual important steps of reproduction or kind of making new DNA without having a host. Okay, and so I just want to talk a little bit about viruses because of what's going on right now. So this is actually the coronavirus, what it looks like. So I'm gonna just give you a little bit of detail about how viruses are going to kind of function. All right, so viruses. Okay, so a virus is an infectious particle. Okay, it's not an organism, and I'll kind of talk about that in a second. Particle consisting of little more than kind of genes in a box. Okay, so basically all they have is a bit of nucleic acid wrapped in a protein coat and sometimes a membrane. Okay, so viruses are not considered living organisms. They do share some of the characteristics that living organisms have. So some of these things, this viruses share some of the characteristics living organisms in that they have genetic material. Okay, but they're not considered living because it is not cellular, so they don't, they're not considered a cell and cannot reproduce on its own. Okay, so they have to have another organism for them to invade in order for them to reproduce more of themselves. Okay, so they basically are these little packets of genetic material, and the viral genomes can be a couple different things. Okay, and so the genome is just going to be the complete genetic material. So they can be DNA or RNA, and they can be double or single-stranded. Okay, so you can have single-stranded DNA, you can have all these different combinations. All right. Now, animal viruses, they are going to tend to have a phospholipid bilayer or membrane on the outside. With protein spikes. Oops. Protein spikes. Okay, so if you've looked at the coronavirus, you can see these protein spikes that are on the outside. Okay, The problem with these phospholipid membranes, is that it allows virus to enter and exit host cells easily. Okay. And there are different types of animal viruses. So some animal viruses will have RNA. Okay, and so some examples of those are going to be kind of the common cold, AIDS virus, polio, mumps, and measles. And then some of the DNA ones are going to be hepatitis, chickenpox, and herpes. Now, the problem with viruses is that you can't use antibiotics against them because antibiotics are for bacteria. Viruses do not respond to them. So if you have a viral infection, they can't just give you, penicillin or amoxicillin or any of those because it won't do anything. The only way to protect against viruses is to have vaccinations. Okay, and so the reason why people don't have polio, mumps, or measles are, although we've had some mumps and measles outbreaks recently, because people are refusing to vaccinate their children. But what happens is if you take, in vaccinations, you're kind of taking part of the viral genome and exposing people to it without kind of the pathogenic parts. The immune system then develops kind of a memory of this virus that it's been come into contact with. And then once you come into contact with it, your body can fight off really quickly the viral infection. Viruses are very difficult to deal with. In many situations, you can't ever get rid of a virus like AIDS and some of these like hepatitis and herpes. You're always going to have kind of a load of the virus within the body. And so, you can suppress the virus, but in many cases you can never actually cure it. Sometimes our bodies will, like the common cold, we can clear it, but there are other times where viruses will remain in the body forever. Okay, a little bit about the coronavirus. So there's lots and lots of articles and at this point documentaries and things like that about the coronavirus. And if you want to do a science summary on the coronavirus, and multiple science summaries potentially, go for it. But the coronavirus is actually an RNA based virus, and we call it a novel virus because it's something that we have never come into contact before. So it really is, something no human has come into contact with, and so no immune system is going to be able to defeat it on its own completely right away. There are individuals that we think have certain genetic components that make them less susceptible to it, and not everyone responds the same way to viruses, which most likely has something to do with their genetic information. Now, it was interesting, if you have the textbook that goes with this class, they have this evolution connection about emerging viruses, and this obviously was made way before the coronavirus hit, but they talk about how emerging viruses is something that as a human population, we're going to have to deal with more and more often. And this Nobel Prize winner, he actually died in 2008, but he said this when he won the Nobel Prize: "We live in an evolutionary competition with microbes. There is no guarantee that we will be the survivors." And so we are constantly battling viruses and other microorganisms because both the viruses and microorganisms can evolve, and so can we. But it is this kind of constant back and forth. One thing that makes viruses so hard to deal with is that they replicate their DNA very quickly, and they reproduce very quickly, and they have lots and lots of mutations that happen. Those mutations can make so that the viruses evolve very quickly and make it very difficult for us to combat them. The reason why you have to have new flu vaccinations every single year is because the viruses that are infecting us every flu season are different, because they've evolved, they've mutated, and changed, and therefore your body will not be able to defeat them on their own. And so the flu virus or the flu shot is trying to help you kind of build up an immunity to what virus they think is going to be kind of the one that comes out that season. All right, so this is a little bit about viruses. I do suggest really looking into kind of the coronavirus and using that as one of the science summaries. There is some information about kind of how they hijack the system of the host cell, but we're not going to really worry too much about that. But the main thing is to know is that viruses depend on host cells in order for them to be able to replicate themselves. Okay.